I will never forget that day, as it was my 30th birthday, and I was rushing home from work to get ready to go out for a meal and have some drinks with my buddies. I recall thinking that it was typical that it was raining, and thank goodness we had the foresight to book something that was indoors. Otherwise, the experience would have been not great. As I was driving home, the usual route was closed due to a fallen tree, so I had to go to a less convenient way, which was typical. I had left work at about 5 p.m. It was now around 5:30, and I was going about another 20 minutes before I got home. As I made my way down less familiar and familiar roads, I began to get a sense of unease. It would be difficult to put my finger on exactly what it was, but something felt off. And no, it wasn't that I was lost. It's just this feeling in your stomach. I'm a stickler for routine, and so you have to understand that. I put it down to the fact that I had been thrown off my usual course, and that was just me making an odd touch. It certainly wasn't late, but I had this feeling in my bones as if I had already missed the party. It's very hard to explain. It was incredibly cold and dark along this alternative route, which didn't seem to add up with the time of day that should have also been. I can recall even thinking to myself, it's like stepping into the Twilight Zone. What happened next, I have no explanation for. I won't say that the car began to elevate or anything quite that obvious. And there were any flashing lights, but there was definitely something up in the sky, just out of my peripheral vision. And that's when it happened. I was no longer driving. I was still in the car, on the same stretch of road, but it was now completely dark, and when I gazed out the dash, it was 10 p.m. Somehow, I had lost 4.5 hours. I looked at my cell to see if there was some sort of faulty wiring in my dashboard clock. I had over 17 missed calls, and many more texts and voicemails. My friends and family were all panicking. Where was I? And the time was totally correct. It was indeed 10 p.m. I was now 90 minutes late to the restaurant, but even scarier, in the blink of an eye, that it had seemed to be that I'd be there. Almost 5 hours had passed, and I had zero recollection of whatever happened. I was freezing cold. I felt like I had been running a marathon. Every muscle hurt deeply and ached. I stank of sweat, like I had been doing an intense cardio workout, or T25 with Shaun T. And despite shivering, my hair was wet. And the next day, my boyfriend strongly insisted that I went to go see the doctor. My friends and family were all worried that I'd experienced a seizure. They did various tests, but found out I had experienced no such seizure. I was healthy. No sign of anything wrong with blood, heart, or brain scans, all normal. Except one tiny thing. On the base of my spinal cord was a small mark. They said it was reminiscent to an injection site, and it wasn't like traditional scar tissue. It was like something hot had been inserted into my skin. I have never had a shot in that particular spot before, and they couldn't explain it. I almost wonder, was I abducted? When most people experience or witness unusual things, they're usually all alone in the middle of nowhere. And that's not to say it isn't true or that it didn't happen. In fact, maybe these things that come to visit decide that it is the best time to show themselves. But the one time that I saw something amazing, I wasn't in the end of nowhere. I was right in the middle of town, with a group of close friends. In fact, we just finished a late-night football practice for one of our local 5-a-side teams. We were busy locking up the doors to the hall that we used when one of the lads suddenly said, "What is that?" We were all around 17 at this point, and probably a bunch of jokesters, as teenage boys are. Nothing too bad, but always trying to scare each other. So, we all started thinking it was a ghost or a werewolf or something, and began laughing and mocking about. And then I noticed my friend, who I'll call Ben, who made the remark, looking up at the sky with a very dead serious expression on his face. Now, this was odd. Ben was the type to make the mockery of most any situation. Out of all of us, he was the no-nonsense kind of individual. Well, no nonsense, like he didn't believe bullcrap. So, we all take a look upward, still fully expecting to hear a ha-ha-ha moment. But there wasn't one. We all looked up at the sky, and there was something there. We'd all seen enough movies to know what a flying saucer looked like, and this was somewhat similar. It kind of reminded me of a cartoon version of what a saucer would look like. It was hovering in the sky. We all just stood there, gaping at it. But it didn't move. It wasn't like a saucer where it's rotating. It was perfectly still, not making a noise. Then, without it moving, in a sudden flash of light and a fork of lightning, it vanished instantly. We all just stood there for a few moments, gazing at one another, unsure of what to say or think. Did we see an alien spacecraft? Or was this some sort of secret military experimental craft? I have no idea, but to this day, all 7 of us saw it, and we could all vouch for it. That was almost 10 years ago, and we still mention it every now and then. And none of us will say we imagined it. We've all recollected, and we all recount the same details. We still just have no idea what it was, and as much as we would like to believe it was an alien craft, it could very well possibly be a government craft. We're just not exactly sure. I'm pretty sure that I've experienced an alien abduction. In fact, possibly several. I have all the classic signs: unexplained time loss with no memory, blackouts, and unusual markings on my body. I even experience vivid night terrors of being somewhere I don't fully recognize, and blurry faces looming over me. The feeling of being touched, examined, probed. I've often woken up in the morning, completely and utterly drained, despite seemingly having slept for a solid 12 hours. I remain lethargic, devoid of all energy for days on end, no matter how many monsters or coffee I drink. You might be thinking that it's pretty drastic to jump to the conclusion of a UFO, let alone alien abductions. Perhaps you are depressed or suffer from some sort of vitamin deficiency, or just aren't getting sufficient rest. Well, those were the first things I did explore. Many of them. I tried to think of it from a very rational perspective. I even got full blood and body tests, even questioned my sanity and mental health, drastically seeking to improve my diet, my lifestyle, and my fitness. But nothing changed. I would wake up with bruising on my arms, as if I had been held down by Goliath himself. I live alone. No pets, nothing. Not even goldfish. I have multiple alarms and safety, so there was no intruder. And, out of curiosity and for peace of mind, I had installed a camera in the bedroom. Around 2:53 every night, the same motion sensor would go off, and the camera would show me moving about. But no, there were no little green men, no bright lights. I didn't disappear, yet the camera showed no reason for the bruising. I had medical tests, nothing. No illnesses or diseases. The doctors couldn't explain it. Said I must have very sensitive skin, and the act of turning over in bed was causing the bruising. That had never happened before, so why now? Then something else strange began happening. Just so you know, I'm a female, around 34 years old. I haven't dated or had a partner for quite some time. I'd begun to skip my periods. Off I went to the doctors, and I was definitely not pregnant. I was sent to an OBGYN, who suggested maybe early, very early menopause. Yet there were no other symptoms. And that was when also I discovered something interesting. I was fed up and anxious and lonely. Ended up drinking myself into a drunken stupor, feeling sorry for myself. I woke up the next morning feeling like death, warmed up, but no new bruising. I felt sick, had a killer headache, and was hungover. I did not feel exhausted or used. Used has been one of the best ways I can come to describe how I felt in the morning. I didn't honestly know what is happening to me, or how long it will go on for. The fact that they don't like it when I drink means I'm verging on becoming a borderline alcoholic. But at least I wake up feeling like me, rather than somebody's discarded experiment. If you know anything to help me, please tell me. I feel like I'm going crazy. I was taking my dog for a late evening walk. It was around 11 at night, and she had been whining and begging to go out. Rather than ignoring her and come down to a mess, I threw on my coat. It was cold and dark, so we headed to a nearby park, which had a grassy area just behind the house. This park wasn't blocks and blocks away. It was actually right on the corner. I was willing to have her hurry up and finish so we can get back. Of course, she began sniffing and acting really weird. The area in which she was urinating is all fenced off, and so dogs can't leave any presence, but she is scrabbling about and is very interested in the area behind the trees. There was this really high-pitched humming noise, which kind of made my teeth hurt thinking back about it. I cannot for the life of me pinpoint where it was coming from. Then she stops, lies down, rolls over, back in full submission. Just as I think things can't get any weirder, a figure steps out from behind the tree. Now, I refer to this figure as him. To be fair, this figure could have been male or female. There was no real way to tell, but for the story I will call him. He was tall, around 8 or so feet, and he would have towered above me. He was a pale gray color, apparently completely naked, gray skin, legs and arms very long, and a very typical large bulbous head, and long oval shaped, with no mouth or nose, but huge dead black eyes. It stood there for a moment. I stood there. This thing looked at the dog and started to kind of levitate over her. That's when I think I went into fight or flight. I rushed over, shouting, grabbed my dog. Then this thing sort of floated back again, and there was this bright light that engulfed me and my dog. Like when someone takes a photo and the flash goes off, but much more blinding and brighter. This was like all around me, not just from one direction. There was also that high-pitched humming coming from around. Then, in 1 second or less than, the humming, the light, and this being were gone. We ran back home. We got out of there quickly and stayed inside. Now, I don't ever take my dog over in that direction. I don't believe in aliens or UFOs, but I cannot explain for the life of me what the heck that thing was.